Well, it's looking like we're getting closer and closer to a Blue Jays offseason. What's the bullpen going to look like next year, and how many spots are going to be available?
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB to win $50 instantly when you play $5. As always, I'm Braden Iwasco. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5Iwasco. Carter First too as well on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. And if you're new here, as we always say, drop a subscription. It really helps out. We notice a lot of you guys aren't subscribed, so make sure you do that. It really helps us out, keeps us top of your page. You can hit that little bell icon to get notified whenever a video goes live. A lot to talk about today. We sort of have been teeing this one up for the whole week here. Excited to talk about it. We're getting into that off-season mode already. I think every Blue Jays fan's head is into, okay, what's going to happen during the off-season? Well, we're going to start those conversations here today with the Blue Jays bullpen. What is it going to look like in 2025? Who are your guys that on this team right now that you're confident in saying will have a spot on this team? And honestly, at the end of the day, how many spots are going to be available for guys we need to pick up in the offseason? Carter, let's kick things off. Let's go with the closer. Your closer that you want to see in 2025. I feel like this is a pretty redundant question, but give it to me anyway.
This is something that I didn't think that we'd have to kind of go in depth about and really explain ourselves for, but just how this season has gone and some of the opinions and perspectives I've seen. I think we're going to have to defend this guy maybe a little bit more than we thought out to before this season started. And that is my guy. It's never wavered for me. It's Jordan Romano. I don't think it should waver for any Toronto Blue Jays fans. Again, you look at this season, I'm not really going to even focus on the season. It didn't go well for Jordan Romano. It was injury riddled. A lot of just injuries, off the field issues, you name it. Just not the typical season that Jordan Romano is accustomed to. The way I'm going to attack this is I'm going to look at his career and how he has pitched over his career. So you look at Jordan Romano in 2023, he had a 2.9 ERA. You look at 2022, a 2.11 ERA. 2021, a 2.14 ERA. You're looking at the saves over these years. 2023 was 36. 2022 was 36. 2021 was 23. Pitching about 60 innings over these 3 years. Again, it fluctuates a little bit up and down. But this is the dog you get when you have Jordan Romano. That's 3 years of being one of the best closers in all of baseball, being top 5 in saves. The last 2 years being 2022 and 2023. Just a season with injuries. A lot of people not liking the Jordan Romano experience because a lot of the time in 2023, we did notice that his starts seemed to start when he allowed the first 2, maybe even sometimes 3 runners and batters to get on base and then decided to kick it into overdrive and secure those saves. When you're looking at a closing pitcher, what do you want them to do? What's the point of a closer? Yes, you want them to put up a 0 a lot of times, but you want them to win a baseball game. You want them to close out the game so your team gets you a win. Jordan Romano has shown with his success rate with saves that he is a good closing pitcher in the MLB. Doesn't matter if you win a game 9-1 or 9-8. Yes, you would love to win 9-1. You wouldn't want to go through all the nervousness and the emotions that you go through that when you go through a Jordan Romano closing appearance a lot of the time. But he has shown throughout his career that he can be a very good closing pitcher. That fastball slider combination can work wonders when he has both pitches working. With Jordan Romano with a no injury season and an actual off season with no setbacks, spring training, no setbacks, I can see him being a very productive pitcher for the Toronto Blue Jays, and that's why I have him as being my closer in 2025. Never really wavered with all this inconsistency this year. I expect a bounce-back season for Jordan Romano.
Yeah, I'm the same way, and I think the interesting thing to look at with Jordan Romano is this season didn't start off well for him, but my question is was he having those problems before the injury occurred that actually put him out? That would be my question, because he didn't look like classic Jordan Romano. So I think that this was a little bit of a lingering issue from spring training that just never correctly healed, never got the time to heal. So now Jordan Romano will go into this offseason. He won't play again this year. I think he's going to come back a dog, and everybody that was saying, talking crap about him is going to go back on what they said, because I think he's an absolute dog, like you said. Like the thing that stands out for me, Carter, is over his entire career, from the moment that he came in, has posted a 2.9 ERA over his career as a closer. And I don't know. I don't know how you can be upset about that. To me, that's a good closing pitcher statistic over an entire career. It's nasty. I don't know, Carter. This is to me, this is a no-brainer. I don't know how many times, we've had the Jordan Romano argument here and there. But at the end of the day, I think that this lingering injury was what affected this season. And I don't think that they tried to rush him back so that he would be there for, the start of the season, or pretty much the start of the season, to get to use him. And I think that really affected what we saw on the field early this season.
Absolutely. Like, it's when you're looking at Jordan Romano and his career, he's really had, I guess if you count this season, which you probably should, he's really had 4 seasons in the major leagues. 3 of those seasons were unbelievable. And then 1 season where things didn't necessarily go the right way. So which one are you going to lean towards? Are you going to lean towards the 1 out of 4 years, or are you going to lean towards the success when you get with 3 out of 4 years? And just you look at like all the stats throughout these years, like you got a lot of consistency with a lot of these stats over the first 3 years. And then you get a consistent drop off in pretty much any positive stat you could think of for Jordan Romano in 2024. Strikeouts per 9 over the last 3 years, 12.1, 10.3, 11 from 2021 going to 2023. This season, an 8.6. Walk rate a little bit lower actually this season. So I mean, congrats to Jordan Romano. Doesn't really matter when you're giving up moon balls. Hits per 9, 10.5 this year, 7.3 last year, 6.2 in 2022. Home runs per 9, 2.6 this year, that being 0.9 in 2023 and 0.6 in 2022. So obviously something was very wrong with Jordan Romano. Some things were not going his way. And when you have a season and a spring training where you are injured and have some injuries where you need your closer to rush back, especially with Erik Swanson and his situation with your setup man, where obviously the stuff with his family happened and some injuries, probably rushed Jordan Romano back a little bit too quickly, and you saw the effects of that. I think injury was a huge problem with Jordan Romano in this season, and if he does get that full offseason, I think he could easily be back to being a top 5, at worst top 10 starting closer or closing pitcher. So you don't start as a closer, just a closing pitcher in the major leagues. But saying that, I want to get into, I guess, my setup man, but I'll give it to you to start off because I gave my closer first. This one, I'm not sure who you're going to go with. There's 2 players in my head that you could go with. We'll see if our dominoes fall the same way.
To be honest, Carter, I think there's a very good argument for 3 of the guys in this position. There's one guy that I feel a little bit more confident in after this past year. And I think I don't want to take that necessarily away from one of the other guys, because I think, again, he had an excellent year the year before with the Toronto Blue Jays. But I'm going to go with Chad Green. I really have liked what I've seen out of him. I think that he's shown he can show up. Yes, the other day was a blip.
A little bit of a rough time to be coming out with this, but yeah.
Yeah, but overall, I think Chad Green is a dog. I think he serves that purpose, and I think him not having to have the 9th inning, situation is going to be better for him. I think he'll perform better. I don't necessarily believe that Chad Green is a closer. I think he is very good in that setup role, to that mid relief role. So at the end of the day, I think Chad Green is a perfect person for this position. I know there's some arguments here, Carter, on a couple of guys that you could debate, but this is definitely the direction that I'm leaning for 2025.
Chad Green's been an absolute rock for the Toronto Blue Jays, especially this season with all the inconsistency in the bullpen. When you look at just the starting bullpen, right, like this opening day roster of the bullpen, you look at it now, it has changed immensely. And Chad Green has been one of those players that has been available for you for the majority of the year, and you've asked him to do a lot of different roles. So if you have this guy coming in as your setup man, definitely wouldn't hate it for me. He was the one that I was debating with the other one being the guy that I ended up going with, to not go with Chad Green here. Didn't see into more of the, I guess you could say, recency bias. Again, these 2 players are both have very good careers. The guy that I'm talking about, though, is Erik Swanson. And again, this is going to come at you maybe with some fans being like, what is this guy talking about? 2 players that have had not great 2024s to say the least. And I'm slotting them in as the two guys I'm most confident in going into 2024. And I'm just basing this off history. Simply the stats, the history, their careers. Erik Swanson with the Blue Jays in 2023, with the Mariners in 2022, just his entire career has been an absolute rock. And again, you go with Erik Swanson, you look at the start of his season, had some injuries to deal with. Obviously, the accident with his son. It's a terrible thing that did happen. His mind was not on baseball. It's tough to have a positive spring training and a regular spring training when all the things that happened to Erik Swanson happened. But when you look at Erik Swanson and his start to the season, a 9.2 ERA, obviously not very good, over 18 games. Just going over some of like the superficial stats here, nothing too crazy. But we got strikeouts here at 10 only, opponent average at 3.18, not great. Post All-Star game, this guy has a 3.18 ERA over 19 games, 17 innings pitched, and just looking a lot more comfortable out there. 18 strikeouts, more of Erik Swanson's stuff that you are seeing. So again, if Chad Green ends up being the setup guy, the 8th inning guy, I don't care. I'm not going to be like, if someone comes at me, like, oh, you were wrong, you're an idiot, you had Erik Swanson as the 8th inning guy. Doesn't matter. These guys are going to have very similar roles. Erik Swanson has just looked so good doing it. And I think has a little bit of a higher ceiling at this point of his career. But with Erik Swanson and Chad Green, two guys that I think have very similar roles with this bullpen, two guys that have been around the league for a decent amount of time now, obviously Chad Green being around a little bit longer, but two guys that I will be confident in pitching in higher leverage situations for the Blue Jays in 2025. Spring training will have a lot to do with this, obviously. If you don't see necessarily what you want to see from Erik Swanson, probably won't start off in high leverage, but you see what he's doing in the backstretch of 2024. Spring training, if Chad Green's hot, if Erik Swanson's hot, you throw either of them at your 8 spot, and I would have either of them. Doesn't really matter. I'm leaning Erik Swanson for you. I'm assuming this is the exact opposite. You just going Chad Green as your 8th, Erik Swanson. Are you as with me at that? It's kind of wishy-washy flip. You could flip-flop Erik Swanson, Chad Green, both these spots. Are you pretty firm on your rankings?
Absolutely. No, they're completely interchangeable. It's one of those things that's riding the hot hand. I said I was a little bit more confident in Chad Green just with the season he's having. But at the end of the day, I could see them, either one of them being great in this position. And I think that's what it will be is okay, who's playing better lately? And that's sort of what the bullpen is outside of your closer. So I have faith in either of them, and I'm looking forward to see. So when we're talking 1, 2, 3 here, Carter, in this segment, mine is Jordan Romano, Chad Green, Erik Swanson. I think we covered it out pretty good. I'm guessing yours is just flip-flopped as well. You got Chad Green in that third position.
Yeah, that's exactly how it is. That's where I'm at with Erik Swanson and Chad Green. Just guys that should be reliable options out of the bullpen for 2025. And this is kind of your base point going into 2025, because you look at a lot of this other bullpen, as we'll get into, who we're confident, who we're not. And there's going to be some spots available going into 2025. I'll let you guys in with some insight there. We're not going to be running it back with the 2024 Toronto Blue Jays bullpen. I'll tell you guys that one for free. But we do have some other bullpen guys we want to get into, still some other pieces we want to talk about. Maybe if we have time, we'll talk about the entire bullpen in totality. But with Locked On Blue Jays, we do get rambling a little bit. One guy that has been very underrated, especially in the eyes of Braden this season, I think we'll be talking about him shortly here. But yeah, just a little short break. Bullpen has unfortunately been a weak point of Toronto Blue Jays baseball and a big talking point. So that's why we're getting into it right now. Got a lot more to cover with this bullpen, so we'll get into all that after this short break.
Today's episode is brought to you by Tonal. For those of us who thrive on getting stuff done, including workouts, every minute counts. That's why you need Tonal, the smart strength training system that takes the guesswork out of working out so you can make sure you're making the most out of every rep. Tonal is the world's smartest and most effective strength training system that helps get you stronger. Powered by AI, Tonal learns with every rep so it can deliver workouts personalized just for you. It's like having a personal trainer at home with you, as Tonal will optimize every workout just for you. Unlike traditional gym equipment, Tonal uses adaptive digital weight to advance your training techniques. From professional athletes to the mom of 3, Tonal is trusted by thousands who have become their strongest. Right now, Tonal is offering our listeners $200 off your Tonal purchase with the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Tonal.com and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off your purchase. That's Tonal.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off. So Carter alluded to it. Who are the sort of last few guys maybe that we still have confidence in being a part of this 2025 Toronto Blue Jays bullpen? Carter, I'm just going to say it. I have 3 guys here, but I think after the 4th guy, it's a drop-off. I don't think it's terrible. I think that there are the 6 guys I have will all be part of the 2025 bullpen, but we'll have to see moving forward. I'll throw it to you first, though, because I think mine is going to be very similar to yours. Who's your 4th guy that you're sort of the most confident in, and who do you think will be part of this 2025 bullpen?
This 4th guy is probably closer to the first 3 guys that we've talked about than the next couple guys, and a guy that doesn't really get the love he's deserved with his Toronto Blue Jays career. Obviously, it's only been a year and a half, but he has been electric from the left side, and that is Genesis Cabrera. A guy that gets lost kind of in the shadows of the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen, especially after a season where, you have, it's like a revolving door. You look at the starting bullpen rotation, I guess you could say. You have guys like Jordan Romano, Tim Mesa, Trevor Richards, Yimi Garcia, Erik Swanson. You look at it right now, you don't have a lot of those starters left. And one guy that has stuck around the entire season is Genesis Cabrera. And he's done pretty well in his innings that he's had for the Toronto Blue Jays. So over 62 games, he's pitched 56 innings, 45 strikeouts, a 3.05 ERA with a 1.43 WHIP. And it's the fastball with Henny Cabrera for me, because a guy that he can throw it pretty hard from the left side. He usually sits around 96, 97, guy that has been locating it very effectively, and a guy that shows passion on the mound. One thing that I've been noticing a lot more recently, I'm sure a lot of Blue Jays fans have been as well, is every time Genesis Cabrera gets a strikeout, he does the little the waddle and then sumo squat off the mound. A lot of times lately, he's been looking into other teams' mounds, trying to pick fights with some other players. I love that as a fan. As an organization, maybe you're not looking for your bullpen guy to start fights with other teams, especially when you're a million games under 500. But that's a guy I'm all in on. I'm loving this Henny Cabrera stuff. I'm loving what he's doing on the mound. You get production, you get that little bit of entertainment value. That's a guy that I'm going to be all in on. Henny Cabrera, probably one of the most underrated Toronto Blue Jays on this roster right now. I don't know what more he has to do to get a little bit of love towards his name, but for a bullpen that's been horrible, to say the least, just a miserable effort from the bullpen in 2024. Henny Cabrera been one of the bright spots for me.
Yeah, I gotta say I was wrong, Carter. Earlier this season, I was absolutely dogging on Henny Cabrera, and he's proven me wrong. You know what? I think he's been a very stable piece to this bullpen, especially a bullpen that needed a guy from the left side that was going to produce well. And Henny Cabrera has done that from the start of this season. Again, he was a little shaky early on, but has really, really sort of found his game moving into the back half, or back 2/3 of the season. I'll say, even 3/4 of the season. I think he's been very, very solid, and he's a guy now that I'm confident in. But I've said that before about some guys who have then been terrible. Again, I was pretty down on Tim Mesa 2 years ago. At the end of the year, and then he came back, started to play good, and I was like, okay, Tim Mesa, he looks like he's going to be good the last year, and then he comes out this year, and he's just one of the worst human beings I've ever seen in my life pitch. So I'm praying that doesn't happen to Cabrera, but again, I think he's closer to the top 3 than he is to the next 2 for me. He is pretty middle though. I'm still not 100% convinced. I think I just haven't seen enough years behind him to give him that full confidence, but I love what he's doing, and I pray to God that he can continue.
Yeah, the guy got DFA'd a year and a half ago. Can't forget that. There's usually a reason players are getting DFA'd. You're not seeing Aaron Judge get DFA'd, obviously. You're not seeing Vladdy get DFA'd. These players, they can go through ups and downs. Obviously, baseball is a game of inconsistencies. So, again, with bullpen arms, you see this all the time. You see very good years, like, for example, just Tim Mesa, as you just referenced. Tim Mesa, unbelievable last season. This season, struggling to even make his way with the New York Yankees after being DFA'd by the Toronto Blue Jays. So, with Henny Cabrera, it's one of those things that, I don't know if you're putting him up with Erik Swanson, Chad Green. I think he has pitched his way into that. It's just, has he done it for consistent enough? And that's sort of where it falls for me. But from this left side, as I'm going to get into my 5th guy here, really holding it down, obviously, this season. The left side of the bullpen ever since my 5th guy that I am confident in. And this is going to end my list, actually, for who I want in confidence for the 2025 Toronto Blue Jays bullpen. And that's my guy also doing it from the left side is Brendan Little. This has been a guy, when he came in, I'm not going to lie, I'm not the biggest fan of. Didn't love what Brendan Little was bringing to the table. But from what he's done over his small sample size, he's done more than enough for me to at least be in the consideration for being in this Toronto Blue Jays bullpen for 2025. And this guy comes in lower leverage as a guy that you need from the left side. Perfect opportunity for Brendan Little to do that. But over his 43 games, 3.6 ERA, 40 innings pitched, 32 strikeouts, a whip of 1.33. And he's got an interesting arsenal. The one pitch that I do like that this guy throws is the knuckle curve. I think anything with knuckleball, knuckle curve, anything with knuckle in it is a fascinating pitch to throw. I love that he does have that as a part of his repertoire. And I'll never forget the Brendan Little absolutely body bagging Rafael Devers in a big spot against the Boston Red Sox. That's when he sort of won me over in that at bat. But a guy that you usually need guys to step up from AAA. And Brendan Little was that guy for the Toronto Blue Jays this year. This is the guy that you need that nobody necessarily knows at the beginning of the season, but to come out from AAA, from wherever. It doesn't really matter where they're coming from. They could come from the bushes in Asia for all I care. As long as they're going out, they're chucking competitive innings. They're giving us good at-bats from the pitching side of this one. And just being a competitor out there. And Brendan Little has done that in his short amount of time with the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, Carter, I'm a big knuckleball guy. I like the knuckle curve, one of my pitches that I threw, so it holds a special place in my heart as well. I really like Brendan Little. He is actually number 6 on my list. He was the guy that rounded out mine. So I do like him. I just think that there's a guy that's right now over him for me. I do like Brendan Little as a lower leverage lefty. I think you need that guy, and that's what Henny Cabrera was supposed to be this year. And Tim Mesa was obviously supposed to be your higher leverage lefty. But now things have switched. So you do need a guy like Brendan Little to come in and be that piece. So I do have him as well. But the other guy I want to talk about is Tommy Nance, a guy that I have enjoyed watching. I don't think it's enough service time necessarily for me to be fully confident. But from what I've seen so far, for the most part, I've liked him. And I think that he's a guy that can develop for next season and be a good piece to this bullpen.
Yeah, very small sample size. So obviously we went into Tommy Nance on, I think it was our Wednesday's episode of this podcast. But this is a guy for me that I don't want to see this guy on opening day roster. This is a guy that I want to see halfway through the year, probably in your AAA system coming up if in an event of an injury. It's very tough for a bullpen to stay healthy with an eight man bullpen. So Tommy Nance would be a guy that I'd definitely be comfortable with coming up from AAA. Is he a guy that I want to start even in low leverage? Not necessarily, because you got to think, do you want a guy like Chad Green necessarily in high leverage? I think there are better options out there. I'm not mad if Chad Green's going out there. I'm not mad if necessarily Erik Swanson's going out there, but I would like to see another fireballer, just another guy that can get strikeouts in big situations. And in turn, that knocks down the higher leverage guys to lower leverage guys. So for me, Tommy Nance, if he's your 8th guy, I'm not the most upset. Again, I've seen what he can do with a small sample size this season, but I think we're looking for maybe a little bit more upside with our bullpen going into next season. But there isn't all the money in the world, even though there isn't a salary cap, but you've seen Rogers limit their spending. So if Tommy Nance does run it back with 2025 Toronto Blue Jays, I'm definitely not going to be overly upset about it.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think let's talk about that is what are the pieces I have 2 spots open. You have 3 spots open. What are you looking for out of those 2 and 3 spots? Personally, for me, like you said, it's another high leverage guy that you're probably going to pay a good dime to come and be a core piece like what Hicks was 2 years ago, right? That is a position that needs to be filled here. And so with one of my 3, that's going to be one. Another guy would be another sort of middle relief guy that can come in and get stuff done, but you're not looking for him to be in those high leverage situations. And then the third guy is sort of going to be, I think, just someone maybe that stands out or pops out here and there, or you take a flyer on in free agent or in the off season here. So that's where I'm at. I'm not sure with your 2 positions. What are you looking to fill with those 2 with the roster, with the guys that you did keep?
Yeah, so I have 3, obviously. I wouldn't be upset if Tommy Nance comes out. 3. I do want a high leverage reliever, like you said. I said that, obviously, that's my first choice. Then I just probably want someone to eat innings. Maybe if that is my long reliever, just sort of the same thing. I don't want him to be the lowest leverage guy. I want him to be able to come in 6th, 7th inning. Again, it doesn't have to come in the 8th or 9th, but a guy that can eat up innings, maybe not necessarily a strikeout guy, just literally a guy that's going to get you outs. A guy almost like a Henny Cabrera. Again, credit to him. Just wanted to backtrack to him. He's been a very good guy that you can kind of put in any situation to get weak contact and get those ground ball outs. Talk about Tommy Nance and how he was doing that effectively this season. Henny Cabrera, I think that's what's made him very good this season, is he can come in a variety of different situations and be effective. But yeah, that's what I'm looking for. We need for sure a high leverage reliever. You're going to pay that guy. The longer man or the middle leverage reliever, if you can find that in your system, again, I don't think it's like a huge need for this team. You need guys that are going to be able to throw effective innings. And maybe Tommy Nance can do that for you. Another guy that could do that for you is a guy like Ryan Burr. I have him sort of in the same Tommy Nance volume here. I probably have Tommy Nance slightly above him. The thing with Ryan Burr is I've learned from the slider fastball mix. This one's not being the sinker necessarily with one guy that I do have some nightmares from. But this guy is 30 years old. The other guy's 32. This guy's 6'4". The other guy's 6'3". This guy is 220 pounds. The other guy is 215. Ryan Burr reminds me a lot of Tim Meza, and I don't love that for obvious reasons. A guy that does rely on his slider a little bit more than the fastball, but I find they pitch from a very similar arm slot. I find they look similar. It's like the right-handed version of Tim Meza for me. Yeah. So he can be effective. And when he's throwing like 93.5, which he averages at, that's when Tim Meza was effective. So I'm not saying Ryan Burr is a bad pitcher, but if you do see that miles per hour drop off and with some bias, maybe a little bit of PTSD coming from your Locked On Blue Jays host here, not necessarily a guy that I'm going to be relying on with high leverage. But for the Toronto Blue Jays, you need to address the bullpen. Again, you need some guys in your system to do well. So the lower leverage guys are the guys that you probably want to come from within, maybe a DFA, maybe a random free agent signing. And then you are going to need to sign a high leverage guy, maybe even two of them. Again, you look at the trade deadline, things are going well. Maybe that's something you do trade for. So for me, again, if Tommy Nance or Ryan Burr is in there for the 6th spot, not necessarily going to complain. The 7th spot would be a high leverage guy. And then the 8th spot would either be that Ryan Burr, that Tommy Nance, or maybe a guy that you do get in free agency and maybe go for a little bit more upside on. But one thing before I do let you wrap it up here, Ryan Yarbrough, surprised for you, didn't have him in your rankings. For me, mentally, I just have this guy leaving in the offseason. I don't see it at all. I would like to see him come back as that middle relief pitcher. He's been effective this year. I don't know why. It's just one of those guys that maybe been around the league for a while. I've seen him throw up some stinkers and just don't have the most confidence in. But is there any particular reason you left Yarbrough off your list?
Same thing. I just really didn't see him returning next season. And if he did again, I'm just a little bit questionable on him. I don't know. I just sort of don't think about it because I do just suspect him to move on next season. So again, we'll have to wait and see what happens with him and what comes out of that, if anything. But in saying that, Carter, we still got a series to preview. And I think this will be good for a Friday episode as we sort of kick off the weekend. Just before we get out of here, or sort of get into the third segment, want to make sure you guys go check out after, when you're done watching our videos, go check out Locked On MLB with host Paul Sullivan. Sully, our guy, absolute beauty. We love him. We love going on the Locked On MLB podcast. It is a ton of fun. Available anywhere where you get your podcasts and on YouTube.
Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. So up to this point, I watch pretty much every single Toronto Blue Jays game. And when I watch the Toronto Blue Jays games with my friends, we always find ourselves predicting the next outcome in an at-bat, whether it's a strikeout, a hit, a Vladdy home run, which we've been finding ourselves doing a lot this season. But we always find ourselves making these little side wagers, and Prize Picks gives me the opportunity not to just prove myself to my friends, but also to make some money off my picks. So you don't miss your chance to enter your favorite players from the diamond into your Prize Picks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, take your pick of more than or less than and add them to your Prize Picks entries today. Prize Picks is very simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entries in as little as 60 seconds. That's one of the best things about Prize Picks. It does not take long to insert your picks. It takes literally 30 seconds. You can get them in very quickly. So you can download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit matchup to $100. It's code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit matchup to $100. Prize Picks. Run your game.
Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. You guys all know we talk about them all the time. We love FanDuel here at Locked On Blue Jays, America's #1 sportsbook, and they have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. me and Carter talk about this all the time. We are huge fantasy guys. We are locked into the, fantasy football. So we have games going on every screen imaginable here at the house. So hopefully you guys are tuning in and you're taking advantage of FanDuel's amazing deal. Carter, we're getting to the weekend, big guy. Sort of a crazy week, it feels like it's been. Just busy running around, a lot going on. We're sort of getting to the end of the season, so things are starting to come together. We're sort of starting to see the bigger picture of maybe who and what is going to be a part of this Toronto Blue Jays team next season, and heading sort of into the off season pretty soon here. Big weekend. Tyler McKay, our buddy, back out for the weekend. Should be fun to see him. Shout out to Tyler. But we still got a series to preview, Carter. Anything that you're specifically looking into with any of these matchups that you got there?
A couple of good matchups, actually. If you're looking for some good pitching, that should provide you, at least on the first two games of the series. The third one, maybe not as much. Maybe we'll find some runs. But again, these guys have had some instances where they have been effective from the mound. But St. Louis just continuing the NL journey, I guess. Obviously, with these teams, a lot of them coming to the Rogers Center, so that's obviously nice. The Cardinals being a team that surprised me a little bit. They're not obviously that good, to be honest. I'll say that. Again, maybe that doesn't mean as much coming from a Toronto Blue Jays fan, because we're definitely worse than the St. Louis Cardinals, which is tough to see and tough to say. But it's fun to watch these NL teams come into town, because like we said on the last few episodes, don't see them too often. Fun to see these matchups. But for the first one, we do have Kevin Gausman going against Erik. For the second one, you got Jose Berrios and Kyle Gibson. And then for the last one taking place on the Sunday, you got Yariel Rodriguez versus Miles Mikolas. So for me, out of these three matchups, I think the most fun one to watch is probably going to be the Kevin Gausman start. I think this is going to be a lower scoring game. Erik has been a fairly good pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals as well. Other than that, you don't get a Bowden Francis start, so that bums me out a little bit. The guy that guy just fires me up every time he comes on the mound. If you want to see the splitter in action, though, you got Kevin Gausman, so that's why I'm gonna advise you to watch the Friday game if you're only for some reason gonna watch one of the three. I would advise you to watch every single Toronto Blue Jays game, because there's only 17 games left of the season. So while it's on, we're gonna be missing it in the off season. Just tune into the games. Maybe don't be fully emotionally invested in it, but if you have some buddies over, you're doing chores, whatever it is, take in your Toronto Blue Jays baseball while you can. But other than that, just the usual. Looking for maybe a Will Wagner home run this weekend. Maybe looking for David Schneider to make another jump and catch at the wall. Just looking for these young stars to continue to prove to me why we should be excited for the 2025 season.
Yeah, and you know what? For me personally, I want to see what Yariel Rodriguez can do. I said he's a guy that I'm going to have my eye on sort of going forward throughout the rest of this year. So he's a guy that I'm going to be watching very closely on that Sunday. But other than that, yeah, let's see David Schneider start to cook. Let's see, keep seeing Will Wagner do what he's doing. I want to see a little bit more now again from Joey Loperfido. And Ernie Clement just to stay hot. Everybody that's hot right now to stay hot, going sort of through the end of this season.
Speaking of hot, I got one more thing. We saw John Gibbons come back. We talked about that guy getting ejected. John Schneider, get ejected for the boys this weekend. How about you get a little bit hot? Get the boys hot, get the Blue Jays hot. I want to see you get fired up in meaningless baseball. Doesn't matter to me. Provide the fans with some entertainment. Make up for your lineup. Just absolute fumbles at the start of the season. Put a good taste in our mouths to end the season. Just go on an insanity run of getting kicked out and thrown out of baseball games. I want to see it. Provide the fans with some entertainment. John Schneider, you got to get ejected this weekend.
I love that take. If there's a bet on FanDuel of John Schneider to get ejected, I'm hitting it. I want it. Let's all ride it so that maybe he sees it somewhere and it inspires him to do something. We'll have to wait and see. It's going to be a fun weekend. We hope you guys enjoy watching our episodes. We hope you come back. We hope you keep making us your first listen every day. It's going to be a crazy offseason, so stick around. If you are still watching, make sure you stick around through these episodes. We're going to have a ton of news, information, breakdowns, everything throughout the offseason. It's going to be crazy. But after you check out us, make sure you go and check out Locked On MLB host Paul Sullivan, Sully, if you want like a sort of an overview MLB sort of look. He provides that. And it's great. It's a fun time. Make sure you go check it out. Carter, anything else, my guy, before we sort of take off for the weekend? Maybe go grab a couple beers or something?
Yeah, my weekends will be a lot of studying, a lot of watching sports, and then a lot of baseball for the next little bit. Again, unfortunately for Toronto Blue Jays, no postseason baseball. But for me, as a fan of sports, as soon as the NHL comes back, if you do have that October baseball, best time of the year. Unfortunately, we won't get the overlap of MLB and NHL for my favorite teams, at least. But for the fans that are lucky enough to get that, take it all in. Obviously, school starting, that's not the greatest for people that are in school. But just and also taking the last couple of weeks of summer here. It's going to start getting cold, especially from where from in Winnipeg here. It's not too much better in Ontario, Toronto, Quebec, wherever you guys are watching this from. We've obviously looked at our regions that people have been watching from. Braden was going over it with me. Some interesting people from around the world. So if you guys are tuning in from anywhere outside of Canada, we do appreciate you guys as well. You have noticed that about 68% of you guys are not subscribed. If you're coming back, watching every single podcast, helps us out a ton. Also keeps our podcast at the top of your pages. But yeah, just fired up to get into another weekend. Take it easy and just be watching a lot of sports. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll talk to you guys on Monday.